Hello everyone, glad you could make it here today. In this video, we'll be starting to take a look at the much anticipated and praised high-grade Witch from Mercury series. I think it would be appropriate to start this series at the beginning with the Gundam Lfrith, or Lfrith, or Lfrith, or Lfrith, or however you pronounce this thing. Hopefully, I'll decide by the end of the video. Whatever this Gundam is called, it's definitely a great kit, so let's take a look. Inside the box are 5 large runners with smaller ones for the beam sabers and the glimmering shell unit for the chest, as well as the shiniest stickers I have ever seen. The beam sabers are blue, which I just thought I should mention. The plastic is typical of Bandai releases from the mid-2010s onwards, having great detail and an almost waxy feel. I do like the molded colors, especially the white, which is more of a pale gray than a pure white. It's the way I paint white, and it's rewarding to see Bandai do a similar approach. A nice part about the runners is that all of the same colored pieces in a subassembly will be on the same runner, so there's no digging around. This is a pretty simple kit, so there aren't that many to go through anyways, but it is a nice touch and shows just how thoughtfully this kit was designed. The build went together extremely well and almost felt like a 30-minute missions kit, if that makes any sense. So many of the larger parts use slide molds, which allows the complex curved assemblies to be single parts. This does result in some large seam lines in the thighs, but other than that, I can't really find any issues with the kit besides there being a lack of hand parts and the fact that you need a special weapon stand to display the bit staves in action, which still has yet to be released at time of recording. There's also the design itself, which some people might not like, which used to be my opinion when the Witch from Mercury designs were first revealed, but the Lfrith has grown on me and I'm glad I have a copy. I actually wasn't even planning on building this kit for a video, but it is one I highly recommend. Before painting, I wanted to cover the priming process just because it is different from my usual method. I wanted a really dark metallic undercoat, so I primed with Mr. Finishing Surfacer Black and sprayed a coat of Tamiya TS94 Metallic Gray, which is much darker than the light gunmetal I usually go with. Applying black underneath your metallics does make them darker. The heat hawk you see is sprayed with TS42 over the normal gray Mr. Surfacer, while the backpack is TS42 over the black Finishing Surfacer. And you can see how that glimmering shell unit looks. It is awesome. It's time to start painting, and I want the Lfrith in a very light metallic. Since it is the first Gundam we see in the anime and is very much implied to be in the prototype stage, I'm taking inspiration from 40s and 50s aircraft and need a bare metal finish. For this, I'm using a paint for the first time ever, Mr. Metal Color. It's from Mr. Hobby and is advertised as having a very realistic metal effect. It's a solvent-based acrylic, although I don't know what specific solvent that is, and the Mr. Hobby website says there's no need for thinner. I have 3 different colors and will be working from dark to light. They are stainless, aluminum, and chrome silver respectively. When painting these colors on, I wasn't aware that no thinner was necessary. I found that afterwards, and I wanted the metal color without having to deal with all of the problems that come with thinner, from mixing ratios to thinner attacking the underlying colors. To deal with this, I'm using a technique I picked up from armor models a decade ago, which is to paint with a dry brush. So I'll dip my brush in paint and remove almost all of it on a paper towel before painting the model. You can't have any problems with thinner if you don't use any in the first place. With the first color, I just painted in one direction, but with the second, I'm brushing in 2, both vertically and horizontally to get even coverage. You can also see now that I started using a larger brush to get this coverage. It's a number 12 filbert. It did make me wonder if the earlier metallic was redundant, since it is a little brighter and more dominant than that last one. And since I am covering all the metallic gray up, you might wonder why I even took the care to use it. It is there just in case I miss any spots in the recessed areas, and will work as shadows and provide contrast between different metallic tones. While painting on the final color, chrome silver, I'm only doing vertical streaks. At first, I wanted this paint to be the main color on the Lubris and wanted an even coat of it. But by keeping all the streaks in one direction and using a flat brush, it creates a brushed metal effect. It's really cool looking, and it shows up the best on large flat areas like this shield. This was completely unintended and one of those happy little accidents you get when experimenting. I've been painting for over a decade now, and I rarely get this feeling. It was nice. I'm painting some of the shield details in fluorescent green to add a bit of variation. Whenever I use a fluorescent color, I tend to swamp an entire detail in the paint, so when it dries, there's an even coverage. Out of Vallejo's fluorescent colors, green is definitely my favorite, and I think it pairs really well with the light silver. Now I'm at the part I was the most curious about, and the reason why I bought these new paints in the first place. It's time to do some polishing, which I'm using a cloth for. This cloth is the type you get with polishing compounds, but I think a tissue could work too. Later on, I do try using a Q-tip, which works, but it doesn't cover as much area as the cloth does. And I'm super impressed with how this stuff looks. The shine you can achieve with these paints is unmatched. It really is the best metallic I found that I can actually use, because yes, I know about Alclad and I know about Born paints and the other brands. It's just that those are meant for airbrush use only. There are a few things to keep in mind though. If you polish too much or aren't careful while doing so, you can scratch the paint. Polishing the paint did also get some metallic pigment over the fluorescent green, so I do repaint those areas after I'm done polishing. Now I am repeating the entire process on the rest of the kit. The process is of course entirely the same, although in some areas I'm using a fourth color, iron, to create the darker metallic effects. The original plan was to keep some areas like the frame parts in the metallic gray I sprayed earlier, but the painting was a little messy in some areas and I got the lighter metallics where I didn't necessarily need or want them. I'm using this color for the frame, thruster nozzles, as well as any detail which is on the center of a part. Think of it like a typical accent, and I do put some of this darker color on the knees and elbows, just like I would with a standard accent color. I did have to line my workbench with paper towels since this style of painting is pretty messy if you couldn't already tell. This technique can be pretty wasteful too, since you are removing a crazy amount of paint. At least I'm taking paint straight from the jars, so it's not as bad as it could be. I'm also not cleaning my brush in between colors since I couldn't find the right thinner to clean the brush with, and because I don't have that many brushes I think would work for this application. Midway through the project I had to go out and buy a second of that larger filbert brush just because I want a dedicated brush for these metallics. These paints are seriously cool though, I don't think I can say it enough. They're opening up so many possibilities and making any chance of me getting an airbrush less and less likely. Mr. Hobby seems to have great choices for brush painters like me, and it's always interesting getting opinions on whether or not the brand is suitable for brush painting. Whenever I'll ask someone on social media about the brand, they'll say that it works well for them, but whenever I browse a forum or Reddit, I get the complete opposite. Hopefully this video will provide the verdict, at least for this particular range. It's time to paint the backpack. As mentioned earlier, I use TS42 light gunmetal, which is the general baseline for how I want this backpack to end up. I like the shade, but I want the texture I got earlier, so I'm using iron for this. This backpack is an interesting design. On its own, I don't like it, but within the context of the Lubris, it isn't too bad. I like how it's more or less a container which holds all the bit staves, and the bit staves themselves provide the propulsion. And although there's a lot of cool looking backpacks within the Gundam franchise, those for the most part are just backpacks that happen to look cool, and I don't think I've seen anything this imaginative before. I'm glad the designer took a risk with this one. Like a lot of things about this design, the backpack has grown on me. A lot of design choices I find questionable due after a coat of paint, and it's not the Psychozaku backpack, but it isn't the worst thing ever. It's time to apply decals, and this is actually a set for the high-grade Penelope. As far as I'm aware, there aren't any third-party water slides for the Lubris, although there are some for the Ariel, at least at the time of recording. But I didn't want to wait, so I found a set with decals I liked. Before applying decals on the kit itself, I scratched them up on the decal sheet so I wouldn't scratch up my paintwork. Normally, I'd have sprayed a coat of clear before decals, but I couldn't find the right one at this point in the build, and since I had to come up with decal placement myself, the chipping of the decals was all over the place and not as cohesive as I would have liked, although this isn't too bad since I have no paintwork underneath to match the chipping up with. Although I have a bunch of generic marking decals for kits without specific decal sets, I went out and bought the Penelope decals because they have a lot of red, which will provide some nice contrast with the silver. The closest thing I had to red was orange, which wasn't bold enough. Red does the job nicely. After letting the decals dry, I did a pin wash. This is standard practice, and I am being pretty careful with it. The Lubris has lots of detail for a pin wash to highlight, so it is a lot of work for such a small kit. It's not much taller than a Zaku. In as small of a scale as 1 to 1/44 is, I need weathering techniques that do a lot so as not to make things too visually busy. And a pin wash is perfect. It emphasizes detail and makes models seem more lifelike, but can also create some debris and patina effects depending on the finish underneath. If you do a pin wash over a slightly glossy surface, it'll sit neater, but over a flat surface, you'll get that weather effect I mentioned. There is no clear coat on top of the paintwork, which is usually something to worry about, but the metallic finish got the wash to sit in the details nicely. I am also working in small sections at a time, so I don't have to worry about forgetting to clean up some paint and having it dry on me. Although you can easily make a wash yourself by thinning out your paint of choice, I like using Vallejo's pre-made stuff. It's already at the perfect consistency, and it dries a bit slower than a homemade wash. It's actually kind of incredible how slowly these washes can dry for being acrylic. I wanted to add a bit of a patina to the model and subtly break up those large sections of silver. This is a technique I've been using for a little while and a really easy way to give some patina without having to care too much. It's a very effortless technique. I'll start off speckling some brown acrylic all over the model and then using a moistened brush, streak it down vertically. And because I'm removing almost all the paint speckled on, I do have to build this up with several applications. And as usual, I know the contradiction that comes with doing streaks on a space use mobile suit. Streaks usually happen due to gravity, which usually isn't a thing in space. And before, I've said that this is a temporary fix until I find a more logical solution, but I like this effect too much to change it. The final step is to paint the beam rifle. There is no metallic undercoat, just the black primer, which I'm trying out this time. The main body is painted in iron and then given a light brushing of stainless, while the ridges on the top and bottom get the chrome silver. I'll then add some decals and a pin wash, and you can also see in the background later on how I paint beam sabers using the beam effect part as a handle for priming and painting. And those were done the same way as the beam rifle. While the rest of the footage plays out, I wanted to discuss clear coats. I didn't spray any since I wanted to keep the metallic shine. But when I went on the Mr. Hobby website, I read that the metallic effect could tarnish over time without a clear coat, and that Mr. Super Clear, my regular clear coat, could, in their words, dissolve the paint film, which is less than ideal. So instead, I used Mr. Hobby's premium top coat in the semi-gloss finish, and while it did take out some of the shine, it didn't take it all out, which would have been the case if I used flat. But after that, the Lubris is done. This is the high-grade Gundam Lubris in the bare plastic. And this is the high-grade Gundam Lfrith after a little work, and I am super happy with it. It's not every day that I get to try out a completely new style of painting with a new paint range, so this was a lot of fun to do some experimentation and learn some new things. I like the metallic texture, and the little pops of color the decals give aren't too out there and coordinate nicely with the glimmering shell unit, which looks fantastic. As usual, this isn't an explicit list of things to do with your Gunpla, but a look into my own process. If you liked the video, consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, whenever that is.